love-hate relationship with Borderlands 3. At times, I just want to spend day after day farming for specific guns from specific bosses for a build that I'm working towards, or any other thing just to have fun, just to kill bosses for the sake of killing bosses as quickly as possible, because that's just really fun, or just messing around with different types of guns that aren't really utilized too much with the current end game that the game has currently. And then other times I just don't want to play it on months on end because something just keeps bothering me, or just something just doesn't live up to my expectations, or because Gearbox isn't doing this one specific thing when they really should probably be doing that. But give them the benefit of the doubt considering the current environment that we're currently living in the world right now. So yeah, not really fair to really criticize that too much because of what's currently going on in the world, but there still is kind of a love-hate relationship with this game. I love the things that the game does overall. I think the new Vault Hunters are incredibly fun and unique and different from each other. I think the guns are incredibly fun to mess around with, and if you're working with a specific build around specific guns, that just equates to even more fun and messing around just overall. I think that the support that the game has been getting for a year, probably about just now, I think Gearbox is doing a really good job with how they're supporting the game and how they're going to continue to keep supporting the game, and the fact that it's still going on and that it's going to potentially keep going on further as the game keeps going and going and going. And the DLCs have all been well worth the investment of not only time but also money as well. I feel like I've gotten my money's worth out of this game just simply from the base game, and then as well as the DLC and its new guns and its new stories and etc, etc. I think there are a lot of things that this game does really well, and I really appreciate that, and I give Gearbox a lot of admiration for the fact that they are still trying to support this game as much as they can, you know, through the whole crisis of what is the coronavirus. The fact that they're still trying to support the game and listen to the people who are still playing their game, I think is very admirable, and I give them a round of applause for that. But at the same time, there are a couple issues that I have with the game that I feel like still need to be alleviated, and I've been asking this for months on end, and it's the fact that mayhem scaling is still kind of all over the place, and I feel like the best place that mayhem scaling was starting to get at was definitely Mayhem 4. Back when Mayhem 4 was the current Mayhem mode, I feel like the scaling then was definitely at its best, because currently right now with the new DLC, the Krieg DLC, scaling all over is kind of all over the place even more still, with a couple of different things being discovered by different players. Even like of those of Jolt's dude, he's figured out a couple of really crazy things with just some of the new guns and some of the new scalings of different things and etc. And I feel like they also need to fix the scaling of certain guns as well. I feel like some guns are just underperforming, and granted, Gearbox is still trying to alleviate that problem as well by buffing guns every now and again, but then there becomes another scaling problem where either something doesn't get buffed enough, like when they buff the grenades, and they're okay, but they're still not amazing like they should be. And then some guns get overly buffed, where it's overly performing, where it becomes to a point where if you want to be able to farm bosses as quickly as possible, that's the one gun you need to be using and nothing else. And to some people, including myself, because that's why I'm mentioning it, that could be a problem, right? And they need to fix the fact that some enemies have way too much health. They need to fix the fact that survivability for certain characters is really tough in certain cases. I feel like that needs to be alleviated in some way, and they need to figure out something in order to be able to fix that. I feel like they need to bring in more raid bosses, because I think there's still an area on the Pandora map that is still underutilized, and I feel like that's a perfect spot to put a raid boss at. But for some reason they haven't done it yet, and I think it's very weird that they're kind of keeping raid bosses away, and instead they're making like story related bosses, like quote raid bosses. Like in the Krieg DLC, spoilers, the final boss of the DLC, he's not even necessarily difficult, but he has raid boss like health, where if you're not using the perfect build and the perfect gun with the perfect anointment and the perfect parts, and I mean not necessarily parts, but you get more out of using that, you're gonna be struggling a little bit, and I feel like that's the reason why I complain a lot about mayhem scaling, is because of the fact that if you're not using a specific build with specific guns, you're gonna underperform and you're not gonna have as much of a good time as you would if you were playing on lower mayhem difficulties. Which is why for a long time I contemplated whether or not if I wanted to play on at least Mayhem 6, so that way I would still be able to get the Mayhem 6 and above exclusive guns. But then there becomes to a point where what's going to happen if they bring in more Mayhem levels again? And, you know, obviously my Mayhem 6 guns aren't... Let's say they add in 5 more Mayhem levels, right? So now we have Mayhem 15. My Mayhem 6 guns aren't going to be able to compete with a gun that would be on Mayhem 10 to Mayhem 15. It's just not going to work out properly, and that's the reason why I complain a lot about scaling, because I'm actually a part of a Discord channel where I feel like I'm almost infamously known about complaining about scaling, just because I feel like it's still a problem and that still needs to be addressed in some cases, with certain guns or certain enemies just having way too much health or doing way too much damage than they should, or just being a problem, especially with the anointed enemies. There's a reason why I don't, you know, ever go to a specific area on Eden 6, the Anvil, which is, I don't ever really go there because there's so many anointed enemies and they're just a problem. I feel like they're still kind of a problem, and I don't enjoy fighting them too often. So, I don't know. There's a lot of problems with the game, but I feel like every Borderlands game kind of has its problems. And it's just something that you need to get over, you know? And it's like, at this point, I get over most things that I have a problem with, because ultimately I do appreciate the fact that the creators and are still creating content, they're still supporting the game, and I really appreciate that, and I still love the farm, I still love the guns, I still like the characters, and the DLCs have had interesting stories and have, like I said, made my time and my money investment worth, right? It was worth going through that experience because I really enjoyed it. But I almost, you know, feel like there are a couple other problems that need to be alleviated, like I've been mentioning before, especially with drop rates. I feel like drop rates are still something that are way too inconsistent. At times when I'm playing on Mayhem 10, I can go like 5, 6, 7 runs with a legendary, pretty much one legendary at least, like every single kill, and then I'll go like 10, 11, 12 runs without any legendaries. It's a little bit of an exaggeration, I will admit that, but I do feel like that's just how it feels sometimes, where I just get nothing for no reason, even though I'm playing on the highest Mayhem difficulty. I feel like somehow playing on a higher Mayhem difficulty, I should be rewarded somehow, and in a sense I sort of kind of am, because you basically get anointed gear every single time when you're playing on higher Mayhem levels, which I think is fine, but I feel like drop rates are just really inconsistent, and I almost can never tell if it's because the drop rates are inconsistent or I just have been really unlucky in a game that's supposed to be really dependent on luck, you know? Borderlands is all about supposed to be how lucky you can get with certain drops, and there are times where it just has felt like that isn't the case, or at least in Borderlands 3, I'm sorry. It just has felt like that hasn't been the case, and it's not me being unlucky, it's the game just not having proper drop rates, especially for certain guns that are just way more rare than they need to be. But I don't know, maybe I'm thinking about it too much. Maybe these complaints aren't valid in some way. I don't know. I guess there's only really one way to see if, you know, things change in the future and people still are complaining about certain things. Because ultimately what we need to do is that we need to get our thoughts out there for the developers to be able to hear them, to know what specifically we want. So we're just going to have to wait and see, I guess. That's kind of all I really wanted to talk about. I just really wanted to talk about something really quick. I really wanted to get a video out there just to not have the channel be dead and not have anything up for the time being. So yeah, that's the video. I'll see you guys next time.